Welcome, everybody. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you this afternoon, students and faculty, staff, alumni, family and friends, Kathleen McCartney, our president, her fair spouse, Bill Hagan. This is an event that is, for many of us, the highlight of the year. You're going to hear a lot of choked voices. We are honoring 3 exceptional teachers, Mark Brandress, Janetta Candelario, Laura Katz, professors in senior lecture in geosciences, professor of sociology in Latin American and Latino studies, and professor of biological sciences. They joined 47 colleagues whose work has been acknowledged with a Sherrerd Award from a wide array of disciplines and all ranks of the Smith faculty. The Sherrerd Prize for Distinguished Teaching was made possible by a grant to the college by Smith alumna Kathleen Compton Sherrerd, a 1954 graduate, and her husband, John J.F. Sherrerd. The Sherrerd support of excellence, innovative teaching at Smith was also evident in their gift to endow the Sherrerd Center for Teaching and Learning in 2009. Floyd Chung, I think he's here. Floyd, where are you? Right here. Director of the center, describes the core principles that the center is dedicated to, and the teachers that we're celebrating today exemplify all 3 of them. These are wonderful. These are the principles that welcomed me to Smith and that inspire so many of us. The first is that there are many different ways to teach well, and Smith embraces all the richness of those different modes of teaching. The second is that all teaching is improvable, and we dedicate ourselves to that goal. And the third, and they just put in an order for this one, is that good teaching is by definition inclusive. We improve at Smith through self-reflection and collaboration processes that we pursue together, and very importantly, that include our students, as you're going to hear tonight. So we are grateful to the Sherrerds for the prize that celebrates these 3 exceptional colleagues and those before them, and for the center that supports all of us to reflect and improve on the practices that we care so much about. Some of you have heard me say that higher education is a profession that's based in long-term relationships. In the case of faculty and students, those relationships are often decades long. And one reason that so many of us in this room share a commitment to Smith and to the profession of teaching and learning is that you experienced a transformative relationship with a faculty member or with a student or both in a class where you could feel your brains growing together. As one first year recently put it to me, "How's your semester?" I said, "It's awesome. I can feel my brain growing. I can feel it growing." That growth, of course, is scaffolded by faculty, by the curriculum, by the community. And in the best relationships with faculty, it happens at moments of meaningful questioning, when faculty welcome students to the edge of knowledge with them about some question that matters. As you're going to hear tonight from their former students, we hold each of the colleagues we are here to celebrate in such high esteem because they are that teacher. And they are the faculty that students will remember their brains growing with, and that they will remember those students growing with them for decades to come. So with that introduction, I'm going to welcome Kathleen McCartney, our president to the college, an educator, a researcher, and a scholar whose own work has focused on the creation of learning communities. Please welcome her to the podium.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to welcome you all as well. It's really a privilege to have the opportunity to celebrate these extraordinary teachers with the Smith community today. Through their extraordinary teaching as well as their mentorship, Mark Brandress, Janetta Candelario, and Laura Katz inspire their students, their colleagues, and the entire Smith community. Their classrooms are engaging and welcoming learning environments that stimulate both minds and hearts through pedagogical innovations, through their scholarship, through their dedication to their students, and so much more. They encourage students to explore new intellectual paths, to take risks, and to research real-world problems. They embrace new teaching methods, as well as a desire to learn and explore alongside their students. They're emblematic of the faculty commitment to teaching and learning that attracts so many promising students to Smith. And that commitment enables our students to succeed here. I'm proud to count them among my colleagues as we honor and celebrate the recipients of the 2017 Sherrerd Prizes for Distinguished Teaching. And now, let the games begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily DiPadova, and I graduated from Smith in 2016. I'm honored and delighted to introduce Mark Brandress as a recipient of the Sherrerd Prize. Mark has been a central figure in my academic life. I've been fortunate to have Mark as both a professor and as my research and thesis advisor. Before I introduce Mark, I must thank him personally for the part he has played in my life. He gave me the opportunity to travel to Scotland to conduct fieldwork and shared his experience and his knowledge. Mark, words cannot describe how you have inspired me in both my academic and professional life. Thank you. The first time I heard Mark speak was at the presentation of the major in 2013. After hearing just a short snippet of his research, I could tell how enthusiastic Mark was about geology. The next fall, I ended up taking mineralogy with him, and in this time learned about his endless enthusiasm and passion. Every day in class, he was absolutely thrilled to be there. One of the most remarkable things about Mark is that he doesn't keep his enthusiasm to himself. It is so infectious that it is practically impossible to be in his class and not be eager to learn everything he has to teach. The topics aren't easy. I remember going through a reading with some friends and trying to figure out if any of us had a clue what was going on about crystal systems. But after class the next day, we couldn't help but think everything was just so simple. Mark had made things crystal clear. Mark is such an interactive teacher. I have never taken a class with as many hands-on experiences as in Mark's. He filled gloves with sand and glued fish to the outside just to explain rotoinversion, and he moved plastic cups about an aquarium to explain crystal symmetry, and even stuck needles in bars of soap to explain optic axes to us. Each example explained the concept so well, and often were so silly that the concept stuck with us much longer than a simple diagram could ever do. Once Mark even got a full medieval knight's helmet to help illustrate the concept of Euler poles. Mark's help goes beyond the classroom, and he's always willing to engage students one-on-one for extra help. He invests so much in his students that they know he cares about them and their learning. It's not just the assignments, but anything someone might have questions about, he's willing to help them with. I remember one evening late, about 10 or 11 at night, and almost the entire mineralogy class was in the lab trying to finish the exam for the next day, when Mark suddenly stopped by to see if we had any last-minute questions. While a dedicated teacher, I don't want to leave you in the impression that Mark was always serious. He often told jokes during class. Once he attempted to make everyone come up with a pun before he would let them out of a van when we were on a field trip. And on another occasion, he wrote an entire song about Miller indices and sang it during class. Although I only got to take one class with Mark, I had the privilege of being able to do research in my thesis with him. He taught me how to think critically and ask questions, which provided me with a basis for my research skills. Even though it rained almost every day we were in the field, there was no way anything could put a damper on his excitement as we looked for xenoliths. Mark would often be too excited about what we were seeing to stop and eat lunch. He usually wouldn't eat, but he would just walk around munching on a sandwich, waiting until we were finished with our lunch to show us excitedly what he'd found. I think he never lost the wonder that fades for many people, and it's still evident in everything he does. He would encourage us to ask questions ourselves, and he helped me to be able to interpret data on my own. Without Mark's constant insight, support, and guidance, I would not have become the scientist that I am today. Please join me today in congratulating Mark on his outstanding accomplishments, including this award. As I'm sure all his students would agree, if there was ever someone who has earned this honor, it's Mark Brandress. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emily. And I have the pleasure of reading the citation for Mark. Your scholarship and teaching span the enormousness of our world, from massive tectonic plates to nearly invisible crystalline structures, a scale, one student notes, that is mind-boggling. Yet, with your magician-like ability to turn familiar objects like fish tanks, M&Ms, Easter eggs, and silly putty into complex models of atomic interaction, the vastness of geoscience becomes accessible and welcoming. Your dedication to students extends beyond your passion for innovative class dynamics. By freely sharing your time from early morning to late night, you ensure that every student is supported in the exploration of difficult concepts in your field. Your classrooms are not limited to Smith. You extend the learning environments to the ice fields of Alaska and the igneous rocks of Scotland. Your research and teaching have exposed your students to the practical applications of geoscience, including its role in historic preservation and climate policy. For your infectious enthusiasm, which has drawn countless students into geoscience majors and careers, and for your novel approaches and steadfast dedication to scholarship, Smith College is proud to award you the 2017 Sherrerd Prize for Distinguished Teaching.
So thanks very much. I wrote some things down so I don't forget what I wanted to say. So thanks very much, Emily. That was very touching. We had, we had a lot of wonderful times together dealing with our rocks from Scotland, and so I'm very pleased that you found that as valuable an experience as I did. It was a pleasure working through that with you. And Emily did a superb job on her thesis and earned highest honors, and it was a remarkable document. So thanks very much, Emily, for coming down here for this. So I'm obviously honored to receive a Sherrerd Prize. I should mention that I'm a half-time lecturer, and so I find that every second year or so, all of my class teaching gets wedged into one semester, and then I have a second semester where I'm more or less free to move forward with research or do various other things that tend to get neglected when I'm busy teaching classes. And you know, like all faculty, I enjoy that kind of semester a lot, and I get a lot done, and it's very exciting. But you know, the semester comes to an end, and then the summer comes, and after about 8 months of not being in the classroom, I find that I'm eager to get back in the classroom, dealing with students again. I'm really excited about the coming fall, and I think that's nature's way of letting me know or reminding me that working with the students is really sort of the most rewarding and meaningful part of my job and when I'm doing it. So our students here at Smith are generally very kind and thoughtful and generous and patient, and so you really want to do whatever you can to help them. And so receiving an award like this makes me feel good because I feel like I'm at least succeeding at some level in that task. Also, you know, being here at Smith, it's really fantastic for me to be surrounded by faculty who are very energetic and innovative. As a person, I'm someone who tends to perhaps get easily set in his ways. My wife in the front row is, yeah, would that be a fair assessment?
I'm saying nothing.
Okay, saying nothing. But yeah, so for me, it's really important personally to be around a lot of people who are innovating and thinking of new things all the time. And they inspire me to try and emulate them and make my own teaching, evolve and grow and get better through time. I can think of lots of examples. Something that happened yesterday that made me think of one in particular. A couple of years ago, I went to a teaching lunch where Marnie Pratt, who's a instructor in biology, gave a demonstration of how she uses an iPad to do sort of an electronic drawing board to show illustrations to her students in class. And I thought, I need to do that. That looks great. So I went back to my office and I thought, okay, I just got to get an iPad and I got to learn to use the iPad, and then I got to look around and find, a good drawing program that'll do what I want it to do, and I got to learn to use that drawing program, and I have to take all the diagrams and graphs and so on that I normally show on an overhead projector and digitize those and move them over to the iPad and so on. And I got to where I said, okay, I'm definitely going to do this. Eventually I'm going to do this. And so a couple of years went by, and then this summer I thought, I really got to do that iPad thing. And Marnie talked about how great it was, and so I I went over to media services and got some great advice from Sandy Bysensky about hardware and software, and I got the whole thing together, and I spent some time practicing with it, and I thought, this is going to be great. And then I used it in mineralogy this semester, and it has been great. It's worked really well for the most part. Still a few bugs to work out, but I'm getting better at it. But it's just one of many examples of how just being around this this innovative, energetic faculty inspires me to try and keep doing things better instead of just doing what I do. Left to my own devices, I'd probably be doing exactly what I was 20 years ago. So thank you to all of my fellow faculty here. But just one more comment. When you try and incorporate some new method into your teaching, there's always some risk involved. And so yesterday I was up in the classroom preparing for a help session with a group of students, and I bent down to plug in my iPad, and I whacked my head on the sharp corner of the little metal chalk tray under the chalkboard. And so like I say, incorporating new methods into your teaching is risky. You never know what might happen. And there's Marnie. Thank you, Marnie. That was a great idea. I'm doing my best with it. But it's risky, but it's also rewarding, and so I'm very thankful to all the faculty who inspire me to follow their example, and thanks very much to all the students who give me a reason to do what I'm doing and make me feel like I have a purpose here. So thank you very much.
Is this right? Great. Good afternoon. I'm Martha Newbert, and I'm pretty sure completing my seminar paper for her was easier than writing these remarks, which speaks to the weight this particular professor carries in my life and in the lives of her students. It would be simple enough to take her at her word that she gets it from her mother, other family members, her own rock star former teachers. And while true, much of the magic that is Janetta Candelario is born of her dedication to bringing her full self to the table, whatever table that is, each day. What is more is that Janetta's work seems almost effortless, although let's be very clear. It is her ongoing engagement in her field, her collaboration outside her discipline, and her intentional efforts to build bridges across lines of difference that support her fluency in and mastery of effective teaching. I genuinely believe she is one of the sole most resourceful people in the history of the modern world. For real. Most interactions with Janetta are mind-blowing, and you come out of the other end of the dialogue feeling better for having had the encounter. Though she might not speak of herself as a game changer, that has been my experience of her. When I came to take on a year-long master's degree at Smith, I expected to be challenged, which I was. I expected to learn, which I did. But I did not expect that my fundamental intellectual breadth, as relative to my personhood and purpose, would be significantly altered. And then I entered Janetta's classroom and exited, excited to learn in ways previously unknown to me. Not only is it fair to say, it is unquestionably true that had I not entered her classroom and experienced her professorship in my first term here, I may not have completed my graduate studies. Before fully understanding that her very being revealed the essence of excellent teacherhood, and before knowing almost 2 years to the day that I would be speaking on her behalf in this manner, I took a picture. Somehow in that moment I knew I needed to document her, us, right then and there. It was November 18th, 2015. In solidarity with the University of Missouri's escalating student response and repeated incidents of racial bias on campus, and in parallel with Smith's own localized call to be better, do better, my sociology seminar was changed to meet in the campus center that evening. In the photo, Professor Candelario is centered and clearly is the visual anchor of our discussion circle. On the tables, there are pizza boxes, laptops, notebooks, textbooks, stacks of articles, a variety of caffeine products, and we are in it. Focused, for sure. Engaged, without question. Imagining the world anew? Absolutely. Every single one of us. The photo itself is learning literally captured. Mind you, the assignment didn't shift that night. Oh, hell no. All scheduled work was due, plus some if you have time reads, per usual. However, the implicit expectation was threefold. A, that we were present and participating in the CC space, which intentionally had been disrupted. B, that we were responsible for making sense of Week 11's assignment as relative to our immediate activist radius. And C, that we were to digest this momentary crossroads of intellect and solidarity as the sweet spot, the ultimate nexus in preparing us to lead lives of distinction and promise. All of this is to say, if I am any measure of the impact of Janetta's teaching brilliance and the depths of her intellectual reach, imagine what delicious levels of engagement and learning are happening for her 19, 20, and 21-year-old students. I reached out to my former classmates, with whom ongoing connections her classroom invited, if not demanded, and asked them to weigh in for this occasion. Janetta changed the way I viewed academics, one said. For so long I thought academia couldn't cross paths with some of my most important identity markers, but she proved me wrong. All it took was this one class. Janetta opened up such an important platform for us. It's still the class I take the most pride in, and I'm eternally grateful to have been her student. Another remembered, quote, not wanting to be that non-traditional student missing class and unable to keep up when my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Not only did Janetta let him into class I would have otherwise missed, she greeted him out loud, introduced him as a special guest, and said that she expected him not just to be put up with, but welcomed into our learning environment. And then she got down to class business, of course, LOL. A third wrote, I remember that class as one of the most important things that I did during my time at Smith. Profa made me feel like I was valued in her class, and I felt I was actually gaining valuable and relevant knowledge. Yo, and she made us work for it too. I had a headache at the end of almost every class, but it was worth it. It felt to me like we were building bridges, and we were. A fourth classmate got straight to it and summed it up for all of us in Janetta's orbit by saying, Martha, just tell them she kicks ass. Obviously, given her position as a professor at one of the nation's leading liberal arts institutions, Janetta is well and widely read. She's passionate, she's engaged, she's on it. Of course, she's written and published complex, research-based bodies of work. Of course, her teaching aligns with Smith's stated educational visions and hopes for its students' body. What is, in fact, a rarity that this prize seeks to highlight, and what's not a given in elite spaces like these, is Janetta's capacity to bridge the disparate worlds of her class rosters, to authentically inspire the uninformed, to embrace students like they matter because to her we unequivocally do, and ultimately to send forth her students equipped with the understanding that all learning, or certainly the best learning, exists only to the degree that you can see yourself in it and expand yourself and by extension the world from it. Janetta, you consistently call upon the influence of your intellectual mentors, familiar or otherwise, as the origin story of your convictions, your reason to push yourself and others ever forward. Gratitude does not even begin to cut it, but for this ceremony's purposes, it will have to suffice. For many of us, you are a significant player in our origin stories. As you well know, your mother was right. I am honored, your students are honored, and Smith College is honored that you have embraced her pedagogical legacy that knowledge is power, that you have made it your own, and that you have made the commitment to share its profound beauty and possibilities with us. Congratulations, Profa, and thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Janetta, by locating your scholarly research in everyday settings, such as neighborhood beauty shops in New York City where Dominican women gather, you bring to life an understanding of racial and national identity among communities of women. In your classes, you illuminate the stories and histories of African-descended people in the Americas. Students say your courses are rigorous and demanding, but delivered with a passion and intensity that fosters engagement at a depth described in one student's words as life-changing. Your teaching, another student wrote, opened doors to a world of silenced histories. This year, your influence is spreading as you assume the editorship of the journal Meridians, Feminism, Race, Transnationalism, a worthy complement to your extensive editorial and scholarly presence in interdisciplinary journals and books. Because of you, your students know their voices belong here. For your dedication to your students and your inspiring example, Smith College is proud to award you the 2017 Sherrerd Prize for Distinguished Teaching.
Thank you. Okay, I was not going to cry, but Martha made me do it. So, of course, I want to say thank you to Kathy and to Catherine and to the Sherrerd Committee and to all of you for making time to come out here tonight, despite the miserable weather, and a very long work day and work semester. It really is very gracious and generous of you, and I'm grateful for that. I am, of course, incredibly honored to be receiving the award to have been selected from what is an incredibly excellent field of sister and fellow educators here at Smith. Smith rightly prides itself on its equal dedication to teaching and scholarly production, as well as artistic brilliance and excellence. As I reflected on my trajectory to and through higher education, and ultimately to the academy, to this most desired and cherished moment, I thought of the teachers who made a momentous difference in my life. Some of you have already read about my mother, who was obviously my first educator, whose motto, saber es poder, knowledge is power, resonated and echoed throughout her life and my own. But you have not yet heard about two other people who made a tremendous difference in my school experience under otherwise very challenging circumstances. These two individuals who are with us tonight modeled a deep dedication to teaching because of their love of knowledge, their intellectual curiosity, and their political and ethical commitments to producing a more just society in their classrooms and in every one of their interactions with students, and most especially with my Latina and Latino peers, growing up and here at Smith. In high school, at West New York's Memorial High School, I was fortunate enough to have several wonderful teachers. This was particularly notable given that the high school at the time was larger than Smith was, more than 2,000 students. And that the vast majority of us were Latinos, the vast majority of those Cuban exiles and refugees who had arrived to the United States just a decade or so before. Most of us were bilingual, Spanish dominant in many cases. And of the remaining non-Latino students, many were themselves the children and grandchildren of immigrants from Italy, Germany, Ireland, in what has come to be known as the embroidery capital of the United States, Union City in West New York, New Jersey. In other words, we were largely poor, urban, and working class people. In that context, I was really very, very lucky to have three amazing Italian-American men teachers, all named Frank. First, second, and third generation Americans who taught, in one case, Italian language, Mr. Sabetta from Salerno, Italy, who spoke so often of Salerno that when I went to Italy, I was compelled to go visit his hometown so I could see for myself, and who made sure that I learned the language that was my father's language, which I did not grow up speaking in my household because of my parents' divorce when I was very young, but who nonetheless enabled me to develop a love of that language and stay connected to my paternal heritage and to my grandmother, for whom I am named. The second was Frank Cucuzza, who was the head of the teachers' union, who led the strike that occurred during my senior year and my graduation, in which many of us threatened to walk out in solidarity, and who taught English language and literature, and in particular a Shakespeare class, due to which I still can recite the soliloquies from Macbeth and The Merchant of Venice. Thank you, Mr. Cucuzza. But most of all, the Frank who made the most difference and impact in my journey to Smith, and subsequently the way that I teach at Smith, was Mr. Frank Augustine, who has joined us this evening all the way from West New York, New Jersey. It was Mr. Frank Augustine who, in the midst of a very challenging Cuban exile and refugee community, one that in that moment was known to place pipe bombs in the cars of people who dared to dissent from the received wisdom that communism and socialism were absolutely evils to be avoided at all costs, and that any critical engagement with US history and capitalism could only be subjected to the most vehement and violent response. It was in that context that Mr. Augustine taught US history and managed to impart a critical and engaged and curious sense of history in all its complexity, but more importantly, a set of progressive and ethical worldviews. And he did this in innovative ways, such as having a group of 15-year-olds read Susan Sontag's On Photography, so that we would learn to think about framing and perspective, and to bring that to our engagement with US history and current events around us. I'd like to ask you to please join me in honoring Mr. Frank Augustine tonight. So if Mr. Augustine helped get me to Smith, arriving and staying here was also somewhat of a challenge for a whole host of reasons, some of which some of you have heard already, not least of which that Smith was just then beginning to expand its community to include students who historically had not necessarily been present here, first generation, low income, working class, and increasingly students of color from a variety of backgrounds, including Latinas. It was in that context that my professor, Nancy Supporta Sternbach, played a critical role not only in welcoming me to Smith, but helping me stay despite my repeated withdrawals from the college over the course of 6 years that it took me to graduate. Nancy routinely received calls from my mother, Elena Candelario, and because she was a Spanish language and literature teacher, she was able to speak to my mother in Spanish and reassure her that somehow she would help me make it through. And she did. But as importantly, Nancy was among the first here at Smith to recognize in me something that I had begun to recognize in high school, but didn't really believe until Nancy helped me bring it to fruition, which is that I could become a published writer. It was in Nancy's class on Latina and Latin American women writers that my poetry was sent out by Nancy to the Bilingual Review Press, and that marks my first real publication. So I want to thank you, Nancy, for that and for everything else that you have modeled over the years, including helping to found the program that I am now honored to be a professor of, the Latin American and Latino Studies program. Could you please join me in honoring Nancy Sternbach? So finally, I'd like to, of course, to thank Martha Newbert for her most moving comments, for taking the time to reach out to your classmates and to others to collect their opinions. I really appreciate it. And to thank you all for coming out tonight, to my fellow teachers at Smith, my students, both present and past. It really is a tremendous honor to me to be in the classroom here every day and to feel like, in my own little way, I'm putting the little grain of sand that hopefully will be just irritating enough to make a change. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Phillips, class of 2016, and I have been given the incredible honor of introducing my professor, advisor, mentor, and friend, Laura Katz. Now, I must be honest, this was a very hard thing for me to prepare. Not because I couldn't think of what to say, but because all I could think of was, how do I put 5 years of memories, inspiration, and the joy of Laura as a professor and positive influence into only a few minutes? But here I go. Laura brings a whole new dimension and meaning to the word professor and embodies so much more than what we expect from someone in that role. Her passion for teaching, attentiveness, and consideration towards her students surely surpassed the standard. My first year, I met Laura before classes started for my first academic advising and introduction to her lab meeting. When I stepped into her office, she asked me the usual advisor-advisee questions, what my plans were, what classes I wanted to take, and my potential lab interests. Then she said the following words that over my 4 years, and even now, I never forget. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do what you want. Laura never ceased to remind me that at the end of the day, the choice is mine. Sometimes my choices or her advice worked out, and sometimes it didn't. And yet, Laura always found a way to celebrate both misstep and triumph in a way that helped me grow confidently and take those skills into the future. Additionally, when I think of Laura, the word that comes to mind is support. In her classes, she uses an approach where students can feel supported by her and each other. She regularly has students collaborate in class through small discussions or projects, and it often feels so easy because of the warm and welcoming, yet challenging, environment that she creates. You leave her class each time in awe of the different perspectives she is able to view biology from, and wanting to challenge yourself to do the same. As a professor, she reminds her students that she, as well as all the professors at Smith, are an available resource, so use them. She finds a way to make herself available even when she's really unavailable. So if it means asking her a question from class on her way to a meeting or on her way out the door, she's there with the best answer she can give. The wonderful thing is that she's not just supportive in her students' biology class choices, but in all academic areas, as well as in their personal lives. I can personally say that part of my success at Smith was because I knew I had someone I could talk to about life, but who also approached me to check in and see how I was doing frequently. She consistently reminds her students that there is life beyond academia, so go be a part of it. From day one, she shows interest in what her advisees are doing outside of academia that make them happy, whether it's being involved on campus or just going to the movies. I think a former student of hers beautifully explained why Laura is a recipient today. She said, "Laura has prioritized her students, both undergrads and graduates, in a way that is anything but ordinary. Her willingness to support her students academically, professionally, and personally extends even to the point of investing her own time and resources." There's a reason why Laura has had some of the largest number of advisees and even 7 honors thesis students at one time, and yet is still able to support them all extremely well. I don't know how she does it, but she does. It's hard not to gravitate to a professor who's so selfless and puts herself out there for you as a student and a person. Laura believes in you and your goals, sometimes even before you believe in yourself. Laura has been there for some of my biggest achievements at Smith, and to stand here now for her is one of the biggest honors. Laura, thank you for being above and beyond what I or any student could have asked for in a professor. Congratulations.
Thank you, Natalie. Laura, as professor, microbiologist, and mentor, you are known for your scholarship, the high standards you set for your research, and above all, for the strong and compassionate relationships you establish in the classroom. You teach how to fill in the blanks of evolutionary history and theory while studying the biodiversity of eukaryotic microbes. When asked what you like best about teaching at Smith, you have answered, and I quote, in a word, students. You treat them as colleagues and fellow researchers, and in so doing have set the course for a new generation of inspired scientists. In their service, you also co-founded and continue to co-lead the nationally recognized Achieving Excellence in Science and Mathematics program, or AIMS. As an award-winning evolutionary biologist, you've joined an elite team of 11 principal investigators selected from around the country to create the Open Tree of Life, an invaluable online resource designed to help us understand evolutionary history and the microbial diversity of the millions of life forms on Earth. Your many honors in the field of biological sciences, including a fellowship, election to the American Academy of Microbiology, are complemented by your accomplishment as, in one student's words, an incredibly gifted, compassionate, and zealous instructor. Smith College is proud to award you the 2017 Sherrerd Prize for Distinguished Teaching.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I never use a microphone. Thank you, Natalie, for the beautiful words. as all of my students who had me today, since I taught both my classes, know that I'm actually terrified of public speaking. So, and they said I should imagine you're all them. So, okay, I feel better. So thank you all. So I am deeply honored to earn this award here. I also want to say that it's really a true privilege to teach at Smith College, and it is mostly because of the awesome students. Thank you. Also, beyond my love of biology, I'm really grateful to have a profession where I can pursue what one of my colleagues called all those darn exceptions in biology, while also pushing away a little bit at social justice issues, which include my work in AIMS, the Science Center Committee on Diversity, and this semester, the Social Justice Curricular Design Group. It's really a privilege. I know that I'm really lucky to be teaching at these times for two separate reasons. The first is the availability of information, and the second is the innovations in pedagogy. When I arrived at Smith, it was really easy to convince myself that I was the source of all knowledge and the students were the empty vessels, and all I had to do was put that knowledge into the empty vessels. Didn't really work then either. But now the world has changed because literally students have so much information at their fingertips, literally at their fingertips. And for me, it's been incredibly exciting so that I can do more teaching that's focusing on critical thinking, focusing on writing, and focusing on public speaking. The other thing that surprises many students is that, like many of my generation, I received no training in teaching, ever, till before I arrived here. And it's been really exciting to come here at this time where pedagogy is changing so much so quickly, so that there are innovations that I can participate in, like active learning, flipped classrooms, inquiry-based learning. And I think all of this is particularly exciting because the data are, Rose, that these pedagogical practices do indeed create inclusive classrooms, which of course should be central to the mission of our institution and is central to the mission. I do want to say that I find it incredibly inspiring to be at an institution with such a diverse student body. And it's that these students here have been incredibly active players in their own education and in my education. The richness of perspectives among Smith students has enabled me to improve as a teacher, a researcher, and a person. And key to my success here has actually been stopping talking and listening. So I love to tell the anecdote about my student Doris Juarez, graduated a couple years ago, came to the lab and I said, Doris, you can do this project, blah, 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 blah. Or this project, blah, 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 blah. I felt like the Far Side cartoon with the guy talking to the dog and all the dog here. And Doris says to me, Laura, all I want to do is learn what it means to be in a research lab. And now when new students come to my lab, I say, come on in the lab. I'm going to help you learn to be a research student in a lab. And so by listening is really transformed. Of course, there's a long list of people I'm grateful to. My parents, who are both excellent teachers. My many, 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 many professional mentors, who I won't list here. I'm also indebted to my daughter Rose and my son Alex, who is 6 hours away, so he sent me flowers. They're now 20 and 18, and as teenagers, we're very quick to point out when I was talking too much. And I am confident that raising them has made me a better teacher, so I'm really grateful. But most grateful today, I calculated I've taught over 1,000 students, and I've had over 125 students in my research lab in the past 18 years. And it's you guys who I really want to thank for enabling me to have such a wonderful job. So thank you.
That should give you a sense of why this evening is so special for so many of us. We're honored to be here. We're honored to hear these stories of teaching and learning and to be part of this partnership in a teaching and learning community. I'm going to invite you all to join us outside for a reception. Right out here, right? Yes, exactly. The doors are closed, but they'll be open momentarily. Yes, okay. And then just to join me again in celebrating this incredible evening and these incredible teachers. Thank you so much.